Everyone. This morning we're going to do a little presentation here on electrical substations. We're going to talk about some of the components in the substation. We're going to talk about some of the safety issues you may encounter in a substation. We're going to go over what you should do upon entry and exit of a substation. And then also we're going to talk about what it is to be a qualified versus a non-qualified person. And I kind of want to make this a little interactive, so I'm going to ask a few questions as we go. So first question is, does anybody know what substation this is? Very good. Porter Substation. A lot of the pictures in this presentation were taken from Porter Sub. So I want to start out with kind of giving you guys an overall view of what the purpose of a substation is. It is the key link between our generation and transmission systems and our distribution circuits. Substations typically step up generation and transmission voltages through power transformers and then vice versa. It'll step down our transmission to distribution voltages. It provides a place to house our protective relaying equipment to properly manage and protect our grid. It regulates the voltage to compensate for system voltage changes. We can switch transmission distribution circuits into and out of our grid. It gives us a place to measure our electrical power qualities flowing through our circuits. It's a place for our communication signals to be connected to our circuits. We can eliminate lightning and other electrical surges in our system, and then it makes interconnection points with other utilities. So we're going to cover what some of the typical equipment is in a substation. We've got our substation power transformers, circuit breakers, voltage regulators. We've got some capacitor banks in a few of our subs. We have potential transformers and current transformers. There's disconnect switches in subs, and then we also have, every sub will have a control house in the yard. So just some images here. This is a typical 138 to 12.5 kV, 15 MVA power transformer. These are twin transformers at Porter Sub there. It's changing the 138 voltage down to 12.5 for our distribution system. A couple different examples of some circuit breakers you may see in a sub. This is a 3-tank OCB or oil circuit breaker. This is our typical SF6 gas interrupter circuit breaker. This is a 138 breaker at Porter. And then this is one of our typical installations for a 15 kV distribution circuit breaker. This is on circuit PR1. So then usually our distribution bays have a set of voltage regulators installed in series with the distribution circuit. Again, this is to regulate our voltages in our system, and it's also used for matching circuits at different substations when we have to do some switching. Capacitor banks, I know this isn't the greatest picture, but this is one of the new capacitor bank installations. This is actually at Palomino Substation. Basically, long story short, capacitor banks are used to help make our system more efficient, to make up for line losses if anybody kind of had any questions about capacitor banks. If there are any in-depth questions, I'm sure Mr. Anders would have a lot more information than I could share with you. Now these are potential transformers, and along with potential transformers are current transformers. These are used on the primary side of our system. So basically this is taking the 138 kV voltage and current inputs, reducing them down to a usable source for our protective relaying systems and for our metering systems in our substations. Here's a typical installation of a disconnect switch. Disconnect switches, you'll find them in substations used to either switch lines from our buses, or in this case here, this is actually separating two sections of bus out at Porter Sub. And like I said, every substation will have a control house in the yard. Within the control house is usually contained a high degree of sensitive electronics. You've got your protective relaying equipment, you've got your communication, your SCADA equipment in there. Every system will have a DC battery system contained within the building. Some of them will have a spill containment system built around the battery system. And then obviously you have your AC panels for utility power, for HVAC, for lighting, And then our 48 volt or 125 volt DC panels, that's for the control power in the sub. When I say control power, I mean controlling different devices out in the yard, and then also for powering the protective relaying and the communication equipment within the control house. This is a little bit new here, and this may be something we need to touch on later, but fire extinguishers. Every control house will contain a fire extinguisher. It's been brought to my attention that over the last couple of years, every extinguisher has been upgraded to an oxygen displacement type element. Basically, what that means for you guys is if there is a fire in the control house and you need to utilize this extinguisher, first and foremost, make sure your back is to the door so you can escape if necessary. But these extinguishers are designed to displace oxygen. We need oxygen to breathe, obviously. So when you utilize these extinguishers, just give a couple short, quick puffs at the fire. If it doesn't go out, please get out. Because remember, when in doubt, get out of the substation or get out of the situation, because extinguishers aren't designed for total fire containment. They're designed to save you, get you out of the area, and then let the fire department do what they need to do. So inside the control house, this is a typical relay panel installation. We've got a protective relaying here and here. This is used for either line differential, some bus differential. Some of these are feeder protection relays. You've got your control switches for opening and closing breakers. There's some lockout relays in here, and then down the bottom here you'll see all these little panels here. These are test switches for isolating our protective systems, our protective relaying equipment from the system, so we can do testing when necessary. We can input voltages and currents through all these test switches here. This is a typical battery installation in a sub with the spill containment. If one of these batteries were to rupture, the idea is this spill containment system will absorb the battery acid if we were to have a rupture on one of these batteries. Everybody's pretty familiar with our AC and DC panels. Typical installations, you'll have a couple AC, a couple DC panels for, like I said, for your AC for your lighting, your HVAC, and then DC for all the substation control equipment. This is a little bit unique here. This is what we consider a low profile configuration. Low profile configurations are truly designed for urban areas where you're trying to keep the general public from seeing what's inside the sub. It's really to remove some of the eyesore of a substation. This is Klein sub here. Can anybody name any other substations where we have low profile bus? Okay. Tainer, White Oaks, Tansy. Any of these substations that contain low profile bus will have a perimeter fence around all of the bus work. So it's not like you can just walk into a sub with low profile bus and walk right up to the bus work itself. There are some unique hazards associated with low profile stations. Obviously there's less overhead clearance from your transmission voltages. So this reduced overhead clearance increases the chance of accidental contact with energized parts when carrying materials, tools or equipment. So with that being said, you cannot carry anything as far as tools, material, equipment. You cannot carry that overhead when you are near a low profile bus. And again, there's perimeter fencing will be installed around all of the energized bus work. And this is a little unique here, unqualified persons. They are prohibited from entering perimeter fencing around low profile bus unless escorted by a qualified electrical worker and the bus is de-energized and grounded. And in all reality, there's probably no reason why a unqualified person should be around low profile bus work. Okay, so we've kind of gone over some of the components of a substation and a few of the hazards associated with it. So let's talk about substation entry. Remember, not just with substation work, but with all utility work, communication is the biggest safety factor for us. So before you enter a substation, make sure you call the system operator. The operator is the only person between you and the system who knows that you're going to be in the sub. If everybody doesn't have the number in their phone, they should have this programmed. Call 787-2120. Talk to the operator. Yes. Oh,
2112.
what did I say? 78. I said 787, didn't I? That's wrong. Okay. 789. Yeah, 2112. I'm sorry. Okay. But yes, please call the operator. Inform them who is entering the substation, what work will be performed, and if you can get an estimated length of time you're in the sub, they appreciate that. And Bob, you brought up a good point a while back. Not everybody on the crew needs to call the operator. The foreman should be the one calling the operator, and the foreman should let the operator know who's on their crew and who's going to be inside that substation. It's just kind of to cut down a little bit on phone traffic. This is important here, okay? If the gate is not within the line of sight of your work, that gate should be closed while you're inside the substation. We don't want somebody from the general public wandering into our sub, possibly endangering themselves or the crew. So please, if you can't see that gate while you're inside the substation, you need to close it. You also need to notify the system operator when you're going to leave the substation, even if you're going to be returning, you know, say you're going to the restroom, and most of the subs don't have a restroom in them, so if you have to go to the restroom, please inform the system operator that you're leaving. This is important because it's similar to the power plant. If something were to happen inside that substation, the operator has a roster of who's there. For one, if you don't call them when you enter and something happens, the operator has no clue you're there. And two, if you don't tell them you're leaving and something happens, the operator is going to immediately be trying to get a hold of you to see if you are in the sub still, to see if you're injured or incapacitated in any way. That's why it's important to let the operator know that you're in the sub. Let's say you're a one-man crew inside that substation and you don't call the operator and something catastrophic happens and you're incapacitated. The operator is the only person that's going to know you guys are in that sub. If he doesn't know you're there, he's going to dispatch a crew to see what's going on, but he could be dispatching emergency rescue to the substation if you're incapacitated and you need help through medical help. So please make sure that you contact the operator prior to entering and leaving the substation. And then again, prior to leaving, please make sure the control building doors and the fence gates are secured and locked. If there are any problems or potential issues, you can let the system operator know or our substation supervisor, who is Bill Casson. And John, there you go. There's his phone number. So that is his new city number. But I will send out, excuse me, I will send out an email to all the supervisors so you guys have that. Matt, you put it in your phone? Yep. 217, and this is right, Bob. 217-481-6020. I did verify that one. I will change the other one for tomorrow. Sorry about that. Okay. This is the fun part. This is Roger's favorite thing here. OSHA. Oh, sorry, Bill. Did you get it? Okay. So this is kind of what lays out what a qualified versus an unqualified employee is. So this is OSHA 1910.269. We're just going to go through this real quick if we can. So the employer may train non-electrical employees as qualified employees for the purpose of entering and working within restricted areas of generating stations and substations. While the training for these employees must meet paragraph 1910.269 A2II, such as training needed not to be as comprehensive as the training provided normally to a qualified electrical worker. These qualified non-electrical employees must have the following minimum training. So they must know what is safe to touch and what is not safe to touch in specific areas they'll be entering. They must know what the maximum voltage of the area is. They must know the minimum approach distances for the maximum voltage within the area. They must be trained in the recognition and proper use of protective equipment. Only fully qualified electrical employees may install insulating equipment on energized parts. So they must be trained in the recognition and proper use of protective equipment that will be used to provide protection for them in the work practices necessary for performing their specific work assignments within the area. So qualified non-electrical employees must also be trained and competent in the skills and techniques necessary to distinguish exposed live parts from other parts of electrical equipment, the skills and techniques necessary to determine the nominal voltage of exposed live parts, the minimum approach distances specified in this section corresponding to the voltages to which the qualified employee will be exposed to, the proper use of special precautionary techniques, personal protective equipment, insulating and shielding materials, and insulating tools for working on or near energized parts of electrical equipment. A little note here, for the purposes of this section, a person must have this training in order to be considered a qualified person. That is different from a qualified electrical person. We're talking about engineers, engineer techs, anybody that may have to be qualified to be in a substation, but not qualified to do the work that you guys do in a sub or in the system. The employer shall determine through regular supervision and through inspections conducted on at least an annual basis that each employee is complying with the safety-related work practices required in this section. An employee shall receive additional training or retrained under any of the following conditions. If the supervision and annual inspections required by paragraph A2 III of this section indicate that the employee is not complying with the safety-related work practices required by this section, or if new technology, new types of equipment, or changes in procedures necessitate the use of safety-related work practices that are different from those which the employee would normally use, or if he or she must employ safety-related work practices that are not normally used during his or her regular job duties. So OSHA could consider tasks that are performed less often than once per year to necessitate retraining before the performance of the work practices involved. The training required by paragraph A2 of this section shall be of the classroom or on-the-job type. The training shall establish employee proficiencies in the work practices required by this section and shall include the procedures necessary for compliance with this section. So let's talk a little about these minimum approach distances that we were mentioning before. So non-electrical workers who are qualified to be in a substation shall maintain a minimum of 10 feet from energized electrical equipment at all times. And also they need to assume that all equipment is energized. So Christy, you're a perfect example. You would be considered a non-qualified person in a substation. If you have to enter a sub with a qualified person, you have to maintain a 10-foot minimum distance from components. Now, if your job duties require you to be closer than 10 feet, excuse me, you must be under the direct supervision of a qualified electrical worker. So a little question for you guys in here. Your approach distances are different than what we just listed. Let's say you're working on a 138 kV line or a section of bus. What's your minimum approach distance? No? Okay. If you don't know, where can you find this information for your minimum approach distances? Safety manual's one, but every person should have this information in their truck at all time. Exactly, in the job briefing book. It's on, which you should be opening twice a day. It's right there on that inside cover. So if you ever have any questions about minimum approach distances, arc flash information, it's all right there. The information's right in front of you. So to answer that question, if you're at 138 kV, your minimum approach distance is 6 feet. And like I said, it lists all the information right there for you. Okay, so there's some safety concerns in the yard, obviously. Shock and or electrocution from inadvertent contact with energized equipment. Transformers and other equipment may explode, which can involve burning oil being sprayed over a large area. Part of that catastrophic failure is some of the porcelain insulators and molten metal may be sprayed over a large area. And then, some of these transformers that we have in our system, they've got thousands of gallons of oil in there. Lake Park is a good example. It was hit by a vehicle several years ago, one of the transformers out there, and there was thousands of gallons spilled into the substation. Not only is that an environmental hazard, but if that fire, or if that oil happens to be on fire, you have a large pool of burning oil that you could possibly be exposed to.
Has anybody been part of a regulator blowing up? When I was an apprentice, over there, it's quite the mess.
Oh yeah.
Quite the mess.
We had one at Amos Sub that let go. Oh no. No, because they built up so much pressure in there. We had one at Amos Sub let go, and it had oil sprayed all over all the bus work. I mean, it was, and there's only a couple hundred gallons of oil in a regulator. So you can imagine the mess and potential fire that it can create, which we've got a little video here we'll show you for an example. There's also some safety concerns unique to the control house in a substation. There should never be any smoking or open flame inside a control house. This is due to the possibility of hydrogen gas being generated from the station batteries. And then again, the station batteries could split, spilling battery acid on the floor. Not every sub contains spill kit or spill containment system, so be aware if you open a door, smell some gassing, there's a possibility of one of the cells is ruptured and there may be some acid on the floor. Inadvertent shorting of battery terminals with tools and materials. Excuse me. Everybody should be familiar with electrical panels. Unless you're working inside the panel, please make sure the doors remain closed and secured. And then a potential for breaking some lights with inadvertent contact, bringing some tools and materials in. Just be aware there's some fluorescent lighting in there. We don't need somebody, hitting a light and then getting some glass shards showered on them. So just be aware of that. So I hope this works. This is a catastrophic transformer failure video that we'll see if we can watch here. This gives you a little idea of the situation you could be faced with. Let's see here. Please update your browser. No, that's not going to work, is it? Let's just copy and paste this into the browser. Well, bear with me here. I feel the old-fashioned way, I have to search for it. Well, it's not going to let me play it, it looks like. Well, while I'm trying to get this video loaded, is there any questions you guys have?
Let's go here.
Yeah.
And hit duplicate instead of extend. And then on your slideshow, you should be able to. Is this it? It should be.
No.
That's the beginning.
It worked on my computer.
Yeah, but it's just the difference of being an extend.
Yeah.
Where's the one where you were?
There you go.
And then you can click it because you're duplicating the screen.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know.
But I think it's the browser is the issue, is what it looks like.
Did you paste it into Chrome?
Let's try. Oh, I didn't do that.
But see, with it not being in duplicate,
Yeah.
it wouldn't show it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Wow, it's really closing it.
Well, shoot. Wait. Let's try this. That's it. No, that was not here. There's no sound on this, but this just kind of gives an example of a catastrophic transformer failure. They've got some fire extinguishing equipment, but I don't know exactly where this is at, but this just kind of gives you an idea of Was it in Florida? 'Cause it's at a golf course. Is that what it was? So anyway, so that is the presentation. Are there any questions? No?
That fail point on there, we saw that glass up likely atomized oil coming out of the jack changer.
Yeah.
And in combination with the pressure leak on the transformer tank itself.
Okay. Well, thank you for your attention. I appreciate it. Hope you guys learned something.
Take out your thing. Put mine in.
Good now? Okay.
Well, we're supposed to have some bad weather today, so I guess it's timely that we're talking about, or I'm going to talk about the T&D severe weather plan. The purpose of the procedure is to provide minimum guidelines for personnel protection in the event of severe weather. Because work activities in electrical transmission and distribution require workers to be in various locations and at various times, decisions can and may be made by supervision or individuals in the field that differ from the procedure but provides the best protection for those individuals during severe weather. The procedures outline the actions to be taken by personnel at or working from the CWLP Grove Street and 10th and Miller Street locations during severe weather events. A tornado watch means conditions are favorable for tornadoes to develop. Tornado warning means a tornado has actually been sighted in the area, and high winds means winds in excess of 35 miles an hour. Designated severe weather shelter for the Grove Street Administration Building includes offices, storeroom, tool room, and garage shed, the yard maintenance building, transformer shop, and training shed. The shelter will be the men's locker room inside the main office area. For the substation area, the shelter will be the substation relay office area at the 10th and Miller Street location. The shelter is in the basement of the main building away from the windows. There's the substation area shelter. There's 10th and Miller Street shelter. Definitions: a fog alert means when vision is obscured from a distance of at least 300 feet. 222 quick call means the number that is keyed by operations that will activate a horn honking emergency call to all electric division radios. This is built in there, Robert. That's a good reason to have that radio on. So that they do that quick call and horn instruction. They'll test it once a year, make sure it works. Turn the radios on in the morning. Yeah, nobody really knew about it. Okay. Responsibilities as a supervisor, supervision at the T&D facilities, including the substation, shall monitor the weather in the event severe weather has been forecasted. And also they shall keep the superintendents informed of severe weather conditions. They shall account for the site personnel in the designated severe weather shelters, shall ensure all field crews are safely accounted for after the severe weather threat is over, and shall document damage assessments from the field crews. The responsibility of the superintendent, again, or his designee, shall serve as location commander and direct personnel to severe weather shelters based on information received. Shall direct the operation department to issue all points weather bulletin for individuals working in the field, and shall issue the all clear when the severe weather threat has subsided. Also, he shall ensure corrective actions are implemented for all identified findings from audits or drills, shall ensure this procedure is covered with all T&D employees, newly hired, temporary, or transferred employees. The responsibilities of the employees are to understand their roles in the event of severe weather, including being aware of severe weather, when severe weather has been forecasted for the Springfield area during the period they are at work, shall ensure they are accounted for in the severe weather shelter at each locations. They shall remain in the shelter until all clear has been issued unless otherwise instructed by supervision. They shall identify nearby potential weather shelters to use in the event they will be working away from their base location. They shall ensure that they are accounted for after severe weather is no longer a threat to their safety, shall participate in periodic severe weather drills. And the responsibilities, EH&S, shall schedule and perform drills to ensure procedure compliance, and shall critique drills and develop recommendations for corrective action for all findings. They also shall ensure that the procedure is updated if the plan changes or if employee responsibilities in the plan changes. Shall audit the T&D facilities for compliance with its procedures. The responsibility of operations at 10th and Miller shall issue the all points weather bulletin to all crews and individuals that can be contacted by radio. This is accomplished by dialing the quick call number 222. Shall inform field crews when instructions are received from the superintendent that all clear has been issued for the work activities or resume or other actions to be taken. The tornado watch, again, EH&S supervisors and operations shall continue to monitor the weather. Through communication with T&D management, alert is issued to all crews and individuals informing them that a tornado watch has been issued for the immediate area. All working crews and individuals upon notification shall continue those work activities. That will allow them to quickly cease those activities in adequate time to seek shelter in the event the weather changes to more unfavorable conditions. An alert, this is for a tornado warning. An alert is issued by operation to all working crews and individuals that a tornado warning has been issued for the immediate area. All working crews and individuals shall cease all work activities and proceed to the nearest safe weather shelter and remain there until an all clear has been issued by the operations or supervisor. Tornado warning, again, for individuals and crews that are not part of the 222 quick call contact system or has not been contacted by supervision. Always allow enough time for you to seek safe shelter if you're away from your base location. Remember that severe weather can sometimes approach quickly, so use sound judgment when evaluating safe shelters, routes, and when to react. Also check in with your supervisors as soon as possible. In the event of a tornado touchdown in the Springfield area, all field crews and individuals will check in with the supervision to be accounted for as soon as practical. Tornado warning, the emergency siren should also serve as a notice to move to shelter in the event an employee has not been contacted by operations, supervision, or their designees. The sirens are tested on the first Tuesday of each month at 10 a.m. Therefore, unless instructed otherwise, response to the emergency sirens on those days is not required. This is for fog, the procedure for fog. When severe fog occurs, the superintendent or his designee shall evaluate field work activities and determine if assignments should be modified to reduce employee risk associated with traffic or other potentially safety hazards. In cases where it's determined that field assignments must be carried out during severe fog, the superintendent or his designee shall evaluate the field work activities and determine if additional safeguards are necessary to provide additional safety to those performing work in high-risk areas. Additional signs, additional lights, personnel, whatever they need. Lightning, in the event field crews or individual workers identify lightning as an immediate threat near the assigned working area, they shall cease work activities and shall cover in shelters or in their vehicles until the lightning is no longer viewed as an immediate threat to their safety. For those inside buildings, avoid windows or glass. Stay away from light fixtures, bookcases, or wall racks. Seek shelter in the designated severe weather shelters or under a heavy desk or workbench. High winds and visible tornado. For those working in the field, use the following guidelines. Seek shelter in a sturdy building if possible. If in a vehicle, park the vehicle as quickly and safely as possible. Then exit the vehicle and seek shelter in a sturdy building if possible. If shelter is not available, lie flat and face down on low ground or in a ditch, protecting the back of your head with your arms. If lying in a ditch, be aware of potential flooding. Get as far away from trees and vehicles as you can to avoid them being blown onto you. Do not get under an overpass or bridge. You will be much safer on a low flat location. If possible, cover yourself with something to prevent being struck by flying debris. All right, any questions?
The only question I have, Roger, is that, do you cover that in new employee orientation?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions on any of that? Situational awareness, right? Yeah, know where you're at. Okay. Next thing I was going to cover is the manual and uniform traffic control devices. And this was sparked by an excavation we had at 11th and Washington near a sidewalk. And I guess we had a couple foot deep excavation, and they were just, the excavation was right next to the sidewalk, and it was left with just some laths and warning tape. And that's not really up to snuff. I met with Joe Capilano. Yeah, Catalano, and he said, well, just call me from now on. But anyway, what the manual and uniform traffic control devices say for pedestrian and worker safety, a wide range of pedestrians might be affected by TTC zones, including the young, the elderly, and people with disability, such as hearing, visual, and mobility. These pedestrians need a clearly delineated and usable traffic path. If the temporary traffic control device zone affects the movement of pedestrians, adequate pedestrian access and walkways shall be provided. It must be recognized that pedestrians are reluctant to retrace their steps to a prior intersection for a crossing or add to a distance or out of the way to travel to a destination. So if you've got an open excavation on a sidewalk in the middle of the block, it's much easier just to close that sidewalk at the intersections. Pedestrians should not be led into conflicts with vehicles, equipment, and operations. Pedestrians should not be led into conflicts with vehicles moving in or around the work site. Pedestrians should be provided with a convenient and accessible path that replicates as nearly as practical the most desirable characteristics of the existing sidewalk. A previous employer of mine had an excavation in Macomb, and it was along Western Avenue where the dormitories are, and they directed the pedestrians to walk in the street, which one young gal got hit by a car, got killed, and that was one of the big thing for them. If urban and suburban areas with higher vehicular traffic volumes, signs should be replaced at intersections so that mid-block crossings are avoided. A smooth, continuous, hard surface should be provided throughout the entire length of the temporary pedestrian facility. One question that was asked is if I have a sidewalk open, for example, would it be okay just to fill that portion with sand up to that same level? And if I'm 95 years old and I'm in a wheelchair, I'm going to be there for a while. So yeah, it has to be something that's consistent with the rest of the sidewalk. There should be no curbs or abrupt changes in grade or terrain that could cause tripping or be a barrier to wheelchair use. Whenever it is feasible, closing of the work site from pedestrian intrusion may be preferred to channelizing pedestrian traffic along the site with temporary traffic control devices. Fences should not be constructed of materials that would be hazardous if impacted by vehicles. Wooden railing, fencing, and similar systems placed immediately adjacent to motor vehicle traffic should not be used as a substitute for crash-worthy temporary traffic control barriers. Back in about 20 years ago, there was it was a National Cooperative Highway Research Program 350 paper that came out, and this one place did a study on traffic control devices, and they ran into the things going 60 and 70 miles an hour to see how they would really affect the people. And when they talk about crash worthy, they're supposed to put out temporary traffic control devices that aren't going to kill you. That's why they come up with the sand barrels by the bridge abutments and all that type of stuff. Tape, rope, or plastic chain strung between devices are not detectable, do not comply with the design standards in the American with Disabilities Act, accessibility guidelines for building and facilities, and should not be used as a control for pedestrian movement. Road closure, if alternate routes are available to handle road users, the road may be closed temporarily. This may also facilitate project completion and thus further reduce worker vulnerability. So that section of the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices is closely tied to the American with Disabilities Act, and like I say, Joe Catalano tells us to give him a call. Give him a chance, see what happens.
Yeah, if you gotta close a road or sidewalk, you know, sometimes you can close a small road by yourself. You gotta close a lane at Chatham Road, all public works up, get the channel out and stuff and that. But a sidewalk is just as important for pedestrians. And so, you know, we can't guide them out to the street to go around our work zone. There has to be literally, what we call a detour route for pedestrians. Downtown is the big one.
Yes.
You know, if you're out in Churchill Estates, it's probably not nearly as much foot traffic as downtown. And then also probably not near as many handicapped.
Yeah.
Right, or a wheelchair, or a walker, or a blind person, or just someone that has difficulty walking, period.
Yeah.
The question came up too about covering holes. So when you talk about covering a hole that you dug, if you're on a job doing potholing or excavating or dig one hole, if you're digging one hole or multiple holes and you got to cover it for the night, what do you cover it with? Somebody says, is plywood sufficient? Well, the answer is it has to be sufficient on there. If it's in the street, obviously plywood wouldn't work, right? But if it's in a backyard in the corner, you could use plywood where you think someone may walk on it. It has to be suitable to hold the weight of a person, let's say. For the pothole type things, you know, very small things, you know, usually plywood would work, but if it's in the middle of the sidewalk or something. So, David?
Yeah, Roger started his presentation off by mentioning that they had an excavation at 11, whatever road that was, right next to sidewalk. So next to a sidewalk, not in the middle of the sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
And they put some lats and some caution tape, and that wasn't good enough.
That would have been good.
No, so the scenario on that is if you're going to excavate next to the sidewalk like that, then you would have to build a barrier like a gate or a fence or some kind of thing that a pedestrian could lean on and it not fall over. Well, we're not going to do that, right? That's not going to happen. So the alternative is make a detour, close that sidewalk there for them, and they have to go around. So yeah, they could still get down the walk, but tied with that MUTCD and the American with Disabilities Act, because it's right next to there, you don't want someone to fall in it, or if you had a caution tape or something like that, if they leaned on it, they would fall in it.
You know, think about it, somebody that's blind, for example, coming along like this with a stick, and I end up in that ditch, break an ankle or whatever.
Anything else? No? Derek's ready for smoke? Again, rubber gloves are in. I think they're going to put them away today, but let's get them changed out as quickly as we can. Thank you for your attention. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Okay, so here, without more on the hole. More on the hole
I did
group.
have a picture of it, but I didn't bring it up.
Okay. Well, as you know, I'm a streetlight guy. We do a lot of bad undergrounds, and streetlights aren't backyards, right?
Yeah.
So I had a situation, and I'm just wondering what to do.